All right, welcome to everyone who is connected in with us live. And I also want to say welcome to those of you that are watching the replay. My name is Rhonda M. Jordan, and I come to you live on Wednesdays at 12 noon Eastern Time to share with you some tips and strategies that will help you build an online or digital business, if you will. And so, what you can expect is that on these different lives, that you will walk away with some information that you can immediately implement and start using to help you grow your digital business. So, if you happen to be on with me live today, feel free to drop into the comments and say hello. You can also share where it is that you are watching from if you're comfortable doing so. Today, what we're going to be doing is talking about content ideas, but specifically an unlikely place that you can get content ideas. Now, for those of you that don't know me, I am a pretty avid reader, always have been, probably always will be. And so, one of the things that I have done for a long time, and I thought everybody did it, is I have been able to extract information from books that I've been able to turn into content ideas that I share with my audience. So, one of the things that I'm going to be talking about is how you yourself can use that unlikely source, if you will, meaning books that you are reading, that will in fact allow you to extract ideas that you can create all sorts of different content around. So definitely want to encourage you to grab something to take notes with, whether you do it pen and paper style, or if in fact you do it by actually taking notes, let's say in a Google Doc or the Notes app. So definitely want to say hello. Hi, Denise. How are you? Definitely, this is something, and I have a specific tip for you that I'm going to be sharing that perhaps you haven't thought about and may want to share with your audience. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into the content. So, when you are reading a book, and I'm talking specifically like, something that relates to your niche or a business book, or if you're into, a specific type of activity, such as I always say, like crocheting or fishing or, something like that, something that people want to genuinely learn about. All of those books that you are reading around those topics can, in fact, create for you some ideas that you can use and share with your audience. So this is not just about business books. This is something you can use, pretty much anywhere. Another thing that I'll share, and I'll don't want to get too far ahead of myself, is even some of the books that you are reading that you might just be reading for fun can have some life lessons in it that you can also use to turn into content ideas. All right, so let's go ahead and get right into the different things. I'm actually going to be sharing about 9 different ways that you can incorporate content from books that you're reading into content ideas. All right, so the first thing that I would say to you is, the books themselves are just hidden gold mines of nuggets of wisdom. I'm going to give you an example. If you happen to be on last week's live training with me, I actually pulled a quote right out of a book that I read. I've read this book numerous times, and it's called The Power of Focus, but I have it was something about this quote that just stuck with me. And I'm going to share with you that the quote is, everything you want is on the other side of fear. I probably read that quote 15 years ago, but it resonated with me so much. So I shared it last week on a live stream because we were talking about how to, start really overcoming fear. And that quote just immediately popped into my head, and I shared it with the audience. And I think some of them, I think it resonated with them as well. So that was a perfect example of how one little line in a book may certainly be something that can help other people's journeys. It certainly helped mine because anytime I get ready to do something and I'm fearful, which is normal whenever you're taking on something that's brand new, it helps to have things that can push you forward. That's one of the things that we need is things that are going to continuously push us forward. All right. So, the first thing that I want to share with you, and you'll see me looking down at my notes here, is that, when you are pulling ideas out of a book or when you're reading ideas out of a book, I want you to, looking for ideas that you can share, I want you to think in terms of as you're going through things and things resonate with you, with the audience that you're building, it may very well resonate with them. So, how can you create a piece of content that would allow that piece of wisdom, if you will, to resonate with your audience? So, for example, let's say that in a book that you're going through, that they structure something in a way that it just makes sense to you. Like, for example, you've been trying to figure that concept out and you kind of understand it, but they give it to you in such a way that it resonates. Now, I'm not telling you to steal people's ideas. What I'm saying is you're always going to give the author credit. And what you're going to do is to take that and wrap it around maybe a story. So, for example, when I shared the quote about everything you want is on the other side of fear, I was telling a story about something that had personally happened to me, which was me getting comfortable going live and how, my first few attempts, particularly the very first one, was just I mean, it was just a dumpster fire there's just no other way to describe it. And I talked about how I just made a commitment that I was going to get better and I wasn't going to let fear stop me. And so that quote came to life. So that's where I'm saying as you're reading through different books and you find things that resonate with you, how can you wrap a story around that? Maybe something with your own personal experience that will allow you to create a piece of content. Now, that piece of content could be, for example, a reel. You know, this, this is, and I'm thinking of how you could use that quote that I shared with you. But I could say something along the lines of, whenever I'm experiencing fear, I always remember this quote. And then I could list the quote and, of course, give credit to the audience. And that could be in a reel. I could also make that a text based post, as I mentioned, with a story wrapped around it, and then provide the quote in that way. So just think about as you're going through the books that you're reading, read with a highlighter or some kind of way, maybe a notebook where you're writing things down so that you can remember these pieces of wisdom. And I always suggest that what you do is you keep what I like to refer to as a content bank. And a content bank is just a place where you're going to put content ideas, where you're going to put, for example, pictures of yourself or content ideas for reels. So everything is in one place. And when you're ready to create content, you can go to it. Because what's going to likely happen to you is as you're reading certain things in books, you'll kind of remember it. But if you have it in your content bank or your idea book, then you can just go back to it. And that's kind of why I like to do things in a digital format, because that way I can just do a quick search and likely pull that in. All right. So, hi, Mickey. It's good to see you on as well. So, I understand that you're working in the background. Nothing wrong with that at all. All right. Now, the next thing that I want to do is to give you the actual nine ideas or concepts that you can use to pull things in. So, the first thing I would say, number one, is to teach one concept. So, for example, when you're reading a book, you're not trying to teach the entire book when you're creating a piece of content. You're going to pull one idea out of there. It could be, one idea in one paragraph. It could be a concept overview in a chapter. It could be anything, but what you're really doing is just pulling one piece out. Now, typically, you have to remember that when books are being written, sometimes they're trying to, there's a lot of background before they get to the actual section. So think in terms of the fact that a lot of your audience may very well be beginners, which means you're going to break that concept down in such a way that a beginner can completely understand it. So I'm going to give you an example of a book that I highly encourage you to read. It's called The Big Leap, and I have all of these books listed in my Amazon storefront. I'll show you how you can get to that, and it's also in the description below. Those are affiliate links. I always like to say that. So you're not, going to incur any additional charges if you go through those links. But going back to The Big Leap, it talks about the upper limit problem. And at some point, if you are building a business, I can assure you, you will hit an upper limit problem. The upper limit essentially says that when things are going really, really well, sometimes we will do things, not even intentionally, that will cause us to slow our own growth. It's almost like you're feeling like, wow, things are just booming for me. And then all of a sudden, you do something that hinders your growth. Like you stop doing what got you to the point that allowed your business to get to a point where it's booming, let's say. That's an upper limit problem. And definitely in The Big Leap, he not only explains and gives certain examples, but he also talks about how to work through it. You could take the upper limit problem and break that down and explain it to people who may experience it. So just understand that that might be something that you yourself can in telling a story, you can put into a reel, you can, do a whole video on it if in fact that's something that for a fact people in your audience are going to struggle with. Now the other thing is, or another thing that I like to always share with people is, those small actions build on top of each other. This is one of the concepts that is taught in the compound effect by Darren Hardy. So, in the compound effect, that's the whole thing of, we have to do little things to build on it. So, for example, let's say you've started your business or you started a YouTube channel, for example. When that very first video you do, well, it's probably not going to do much in terms of, let's say, helping you get monetized or helping you pull in an audience. But if you could keep doing videos, and they start stacking on top of one another, well, now each one of those videos is helping to, build things for you overall. And a lot of times we don't necessarily see it. Another way that it is very evident to people is when you first start a workout program. Well, you can't do one sit up and expect to have, a six pack. It's just not going to happen. But if you continuously do, sit ups on a regular basis in time and combined with eating right, six pack could in fact be possible for you. So that is an example of how you could teach one concept. So the upper limit problem, the compound effect, and talking about small consistent activities. So what I want you to think about is within some of the books that you've read, what is one idea again that resonated with you that your audience is at some point going to experience, and you can help explain it to them better by maybe in a book that somebody actually has written, and they explained it flawlessly, for example. All right, now another thing you could do with that is, as I mentioned, you could turn that into a video that you do on YouTube. It could even be an email message that you send out. If you're sending out weekly email messages, you could explain it there. So all of these are ways that you can do it. And we also had talked about reels or shorts as being another thing. Now, another thing, number two, that you could do is you can turn the chapters into your content pillars. So each one of the chapters in a book, and you don't have to use all of them. I recommend, picking a few of the chapters, one or two or something like that, because again, you're not trying to give away someone's entire book. You're just trying to pull concepts out that can be used. So in a chapter, one of the things that you could do is you could outline, let's say 5 to 10 points in that chapter, and or 5 to 10 things, maybe 5 ideas. And what you could then do is take one of those points in that particular chapter, and that could become a video, because what you're going to do is explain the concept, but then you're going to explain your take on that concept. Okay, so that would be one way that you could create an entire video on that. Another thing that could turn into is 5 separate posts. So let's say, for example, you decide that you want to create an email-based course, and that email-based course is going to go out over the course of 5 days. Maybe this is part of your welcome series or something like that, your welcome email series. So you could actually take that and break it down, and each day you share a portion of that. And again, always add your take on it, always give credit to the author. Okay. Now, another thing, and this is we're moving into number 3, is you're going to share lessons and your personal stories. So within the book, you're going to find some lessons. You're going to see how it applies to you. Tell a personal story, as I mentioned, and then what you're going to do is explain what changed after doing that. So, Denise, let me go back to where I was saying that something you could do when you are teaching new homemakers. Maybe there is something that you have discovered from a book, for example, and it really resonated with you, and because of it, maybe you ended up doing your own version of it. But like I said, you pulled it from one of these books that you've read. It could even be a cookbook that you've read. It could be an article that you read. You pull something in and you say, before doing this, I was doing X, Y, and Z, and it wasn't as efficient. It wasn't working at all. It wasn't doing whatever. But I learned this concept. I implemented it. I put my own twist on it. And here's what I want to share with you, because I believe this will help you. So you can pull all of those things in and really share with people how they can, how they can work, not only for how it worked for you, but how it can definitely work for them as well. Now, one of the things that you can do, and I'm kind of going through this fairly fast here, is creating beginner friendly explanations. Now, here's what I mean. When you, as I mentioned, are reading through some of these books, particularly books that are, kind of maybe they're even geared towards someone who's been doing something for a while. Okay. And a beginner might struggle with the concept. This is where what you can do is take that concept and say, I know that you've probably heard about whatever. And perhaps you're just not really understanding it, or you're trying to figure out how you can incorporate it or what you can do. Well, let me break it down for you and explain to you in simple terms, in a simple format, exactly what that means and how you can use it. So again, that can be, it's almost like you're translating something, because I don't know about you, but I have certainly gone through and read books, and it's been like, what are they talking about? And you read it 2 or 3 times, and then you realize, boy, they could have said that in this way, and it would have been so much easier for people to understand. And I'm telling you, with a lot of things, a lot of books, just because someone is a great author or best-selling author, they don't always communicate things in the easiest or simplest format so that everybody can understand it. So think about how you yourself can take that, break it down, and then, put your take on it and make it really simple for even a beginner to understand. Okay. So, there's a book that I also love. It's called The Success Principles. And one of the things that he does is he breaks everything down into really simple steps. You might have to be the person that does that. So these other books that people are reading and they're struggling with and they still don't understand it, you're really almost acting as the interpreter to get things into a simple format. All right. Now, the next thing, number five, is where you're going to take quotes and then turn that into micro content or micro lessons. Okay. So, as I mentioned when I talked about that, everything is on the other side of fear. There's so many ways that you can take that quote and break it down. So, let's say, for example, someone is really struggling with this is one of the things I just heard in earlier this morning in something that I was reading. And the person said, "But I'm really afraid to go live." Well, as I mentioned, I told you the story last week of what happened to me. So one of the things that I can do is take that quote again, but what I can do is break it down because I know what the issue is. I'm afraid to go live. And so now what I can do is say, "Okay, here's the thing that I want you to remember. Everything you want's on the other side of fear. Number one, what do you want? What do you want to accomplish? All right, so this is the steps that you're going to go through. The first step is going to be you're going to do a live that is completely unlisted, which means no one's going to find it other than people you send the link to. The second thing is you're only going to go live for 3 minutes. And what you're going to do is cover 2 points in that 3 minutes of something that you're comfortable with. The next thing you're going to do is just look around, the console or whatever format they're going live on, whether it's on their phone, and get accustomed to it. The third thing is you're going to figure out where, or fourth thing is you're going to figure out where the comments are going to be. And then the fifth thing is you're going to come up with some kind of call to action. So do you see where I took that quote and then I broke it down to help that person accomplish something that they're struggling with? So all of that could be content for you. So just know that is definitely a way, just simply taking a quote and turning it into micro content pieces. All right. Now, and those could even become Instagram captions if you're building on Instagram, or obviously the community post if you're building on YouTube, which is where I actually build. All right, now the other thing that I want to do is to talk about number six, which is where you're going to talk about how you can summarize things and apply it. So, for example, applying it to content creation, showing, taking, let's say, three different books and creating a video. And in that video that you're creating, you're going to refer to three separate things that somehow tie together. So, in other words, you're exposing people to three different concepts from three different books, but it's all in the same video. So, that would be another way that you could do it. Another way that you could actually share it. All right, now the next thing, let's see here. Okay, great. So you already have the perfect two books. Definitely. I would love to hear how you end up pulling that together because, as I said, I think for you, particularly when you're talking about some different things, if you're talking about preparing meals, sometimes even the concepts that are listed in a cookbook, you're like, what are they talking about? And for somebody like me, who's not, I don't consider myself a great cook by any means. But if you have a way of taking that and explaining it to me in simple terms and maybe even demonstrating it, I'm going to understand it better. And I think, like a lot of people, I'm very visual. So seeing it is definitely going to make it much easier for me to actually understand it and then be able to apply it. All right. Okay, so I'm sorry. I said a book application series. That was where I was saying, like, you take things and you apply it. So that is definitely something that you could do. All right, now number seven is going to be comparing two books. Now, with this, I don't know if you've ever read a book where, or by two people, and they're both pretty much talking about the same thing, but they're coming at it from completely different viewpoints and explaining it in a completely different way. So you could actually do a piece of content or a video or a written post where you say, here's a concept that you may be dealing with, and here's two totally different viewpoints on, how people are approaching it. And then again, you give both authors credit, you explain, summarizing their viewpoint. And I always suggest that you incorporate your own take on things because that's what people are watching you for. They want to know your take on it. How does, which one of these are you using, one or the other's viewpoint? Are you using a combination of both viewpoints? Did you come up with something totally different? That's what people want to know. But again, those two ways could be, a totally different way. Like, for example, and I don't know why maybe I'm hungry. Maybe that's what it is. But I was watching these two different creators on TikTok create bread. They were preparing bread from scratch. And one was like, you have to use bread flour. The other's like, well, just use all purpose flour. Now, if I was brand new and didn't know, I could be completely confused by it. And the thing about it is, when they went through and explained it, if you watch both videos, now you're probably just confused. Like, which one should I buy? Which one should I use? Why is bread flour better than all purpose or you get what I'm going. So then you come in with your viewpoint and say, listen, people are going to tell you, here's the advantages of using bread flour, here's the advantage of using all purpose flour. Or whatever it is, you come in and explain your take on it. So now people like me are like, oh, okay, now I get it. Now I understand where you're going. But because there's so much, and I'm going to share with you why this is important. There's so much information out on the internet and different viewpoints, and people arrive at the same final, point, which is, prepared or homemade bread, but they came at it in two different ways. Well, a lot of people are watching multiple creators and they end up confused. But if you're the type of person that can take information and explain it to people in a simple format where they can really understand it, you're going to have an audience member that's going to be coming back on a regular basis. And the reason for it is you're kind of their interpreter and explaining things to them in a way that they can understand. And if you're doing things on a platform where they can respond to you and they can say, okay, could you explain that to me further? Or, now I understand what's going on. So now you're able to get that engagement going as well. And then turn around and ask them, what other things perhaps have confused you that I might be able to create some content around? Just let people know that as well. All right. Okay. So let's see here. Thank you so much, Denise. I appreciate that. So, hey, it's good to see you on. I love seeing all of you guys here. Let's see. Okay, rub the butter into the flour. You know why I'm laughing? Because the very first time I tried to make crust, it ended up being a hot mess. And I swore off crust from that point forward and said, I'm only ever going to make or buy crust. And then I realized you're supposed to make sure you are using cold butter. Well, they didn't explain that to me. So how was I supposed to know that? But anyway, you get the point of how you can do that. So going back to summarize the point I was on, which was comparing two books or two totally different viewpoints might be another way that you could actually go at that. And the thing about it is that can also create some really engaging discussions in your comments section because people will say, well, I only do it this way or I only do it that way. And again, engagement is engagement. So, it gives you an opportunity to really get into those things. And then the other thing is by you putting your twist on it, what it's also doing is showing people you know what you're talking about. So you're building authority in this particular niche. And it didn't even start with anything other than you sharing two different viewpoints or two different ways of doing something. So just know that as well. And then the other thing is that a lot of books are going to have steps and they're going to have frameworks. Yeah, I know. So you're going to have steps and frameworks, models, and so forth. What you can do is pull from a couple of different sources, if you will, Come up with your own checklist on how somebody can accomplish something. Come up with your own swipe file. So, you might be able to even just pull in a few different viewpoints from a few different sources, and those become swipe files that people can actually incorporate. And then that can also become a great lead magnet. Because as I mentioned, what you're going to find is when you start sharing things like this and you start comparing posts, people are going to have their own, they're going to have the questions, or they're going to be able to get something answered for them. And so now you can come in and say, you know what, that would probably be a really good lead magnet. And you can create a lead magnet. Remember, a lead magnet just simply solves one problem, and it's going to be geared toward a certain audience. And that's a way for you to either start or grow your email list as well. So just keep those in mind. What is a swipe file? Somebody had asked me about that a while back. We're on another list. And what that is it's just like a collection of resources. So let's say, for example, you have a bunch of different bread recipes, or you have a bunch of different ways to to crochet something, or you have a variety of planners, or you have a variety of headlines that people might use if they're creating a digital product. Or so you just pull all of those together into a file, and that becomes a swipe file for people. So it essentially puts everything in one place so that people don't have to go all over the place attempting to find what you have already located. So, and files can be really, really effective and helpful. One of the things that I have done is I've created a swipe file of different checkout pages, for example, and how people structure their checkout pages. Now, for the most part, they're going to have similar features, but there's just different things that certain individuals are going to add in. So that way, when I'm thinking about creating a checkout page, I have a place that I can go where I've accumulated all of those things. So just know that, from the different books that you're reading, you can come up with those different swipe files as well. All right. Now, the next thing is, a book could also come up with a concept for you for an entire content series. So let's say, for example, you have a book that you've read, and it sparked an idea for you. Well, maybe instead of it being just a single video or a single post or a single reel, it becomes an entire series. And so now you're able to go through, and you could even turn this into that series where I was talking about something that you would send out via email over, let's say, a 5-day period. But let's say it's a video series. So step one could be, this is how you prepare your cabinets for I don't know, whatever, for winter vegetables, or I don't know. I'm coming up with something like that. Like I said, maybe I need to go eat. I'm probably hungry. Another thing that you might be able to do, looking at a digital product or preparing for a digital product, is if I were going to prepare something, I could take something and say, all right, I'm over the next few videos, I'm going to give you 5 different ways that you can create an ebook. Or 5 different things that should be incorporated into an ebook. So I could talk about, how to do the research for it. I could talk about the components that should be included in the ebook. I could talk about how to structure a chapter. I could talk about, all of those things, but each one could be an individual video. And that's helpful because what happens is you're almost creating the Netflix philosophy, if you will, for your content. People will watch the first one. If they're interested in it, they're likely to watch the second one, the third one, the fourth one, and so on. So they start binging your content. So just think about how you can create series anytime you are pulling concepts out of a book. Now, this could even be where you take concepts from various books. It doesn't have to be the same book. And maybe by reading those different books, that sparks a content series for you. because you realize that these are the things that people are going to struggle with. So, let me give you an example of how I could do a content series around several books. Let's say that I know that for a new someone who's new to building a digital business, I know the types of things that they're going to end up struggling with. And so I could talk about something that comes out of the book, which is called Free to Focus. And in Free to Focus, he talks about a productivity system that he's created, and I've used it. And when I use it regularly, it works. So I could talk about how people will struggle with productivity simply because they're trying to do everything. They have their email up and running all day long. And what I've learned from reading his book is that is not the way to go. So I usually check my emails 3 times a day. That's it. I don't have my emails alerting me every day. The second thing I could talk about that someone is going to struggle with is going to be imposter syndrome. Well, that comes out of an entirely different book. And I could put that in and break imposter syndrome down. If you don't know what imposter syndrome is, it's essentially where you almost feel like a fraud. Like, there are other people that are way more qualified to teach something than you are. So why are you teaching it? Imposter syndrome is going to hit you at some point if, in fact, you are continuously going to different levels or trying new things. So that could be the second thing. A third thing that I could talk about is fear, which is every time you get ready to do something different or something new, fear is going to hit you. Now, fear, and how I'm explaining the difference between imposter syndrome and fear is just that thing that says, okay, I want to go live. I've thought this through. I know exactly what I want to say, but for some reason, I just can't hit the go live button because I'm scared. And so I could then introduce them to the book Hello Fears. And in Hello Fears, it's going to help you understand the whole concepts of fear and how you can work through it. Then I guess you can see what I'm saying. Taking various books and creating a series around it, for somebody who's going to deal with all that stuff. So that is definitely something that you could actually do as well. And content series, I'm telling you, that is really something you want to ultimately create, because again, not only is that going to create that bingeable effect, but the other thing is it is truly building the know, like, and trust factors with a lot of people. And you all have heard me say before, if you've been on any of my training, you have to allow people to get to know you. Then they'll decide whether or not they like you and if they can trust you. All three have to be in place before they're ever going to buy anything from you. Honestly, all three have to be in place in most cases before they're even going to subscribe or follow you. So, creating a content series where they're watching several different pieces of content that you've created, one right after the other, builds those factors much faster than if they're just watching a single piece of content that you've created. So, just kind of keep that in mind as we are going through things. So, one of the things that I want to do now is because I've gone through pretty much all of them. Let's see. Denise says, okay, yes. So, an asset folder, two different things that I want to talk about with that to make sure that you all are clear on it. So, I call it a content bank. And in the content bank, what you're going to do is you're going to create the first thing that you're going to create is, or write out, would be different content ideas that you have. So you might say, I want to create a series around this. I want to do a video on this. And I would pull ideas from things that people have already asked you about or that they're going to need. And then what you do is you have that in some type of folder. When I say a folder, you might want to put it into the Notes app on your phone. You might want to put it into a Google Docs. You might want to put it into a Trello board. And let me just see if I can show you a Trello board. Hold on for me one second so I can. A Trello board is a great way. I might have to take some time and log in. Give me one second to get logged in. But with a Trello board, it's like a Kanban system where you have different lists on the same page, and I'm logging in. So bear with me as I get logged into, as I get logged in here. And for those of you that don't know, I use 1Password for some reason. Here we go. Okay. And this is something that you all should do. It's requesting my so when you see me on my phone here, it's requesting my security app to give me a code. All of you should have this because people are out trying to steal your login information on a regular basis. Okay, so let's see here. Let's see if I can get into one of my boards so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Okay. One second, Denise. I'm going to bring up my screen. Let me switch over here so you can see what I'm talking about here. Okay. All right, you can see my screen now. So this is an example of how you could have a content bank created. If you'll notice, what I have here is over here. Let me move myself out of the way. Okay, what I have over here is my business compass, and the business compass is where you have gone through and you have outlined what it is you're going to do. Then I have the different types of content pillars that I have, but each one of these is in fact a topic. And let's see, now I've switched over to ClickUp, but this one is free. Let me see if I pull this up, if you can actually see it. Trying to find out if I have one of these that is filled out. Like I said, I've switched over, so I'm trying to show you. Hold on one second. Let me stop sharing, and because I want you to see how you can do this in terms of creating this. So essentially what you're going to do is get into a place where you can store all of the pieces of content that you have. Let's see. I'm sorry, I hadn't planned to pull this up, so this is why I don't necessarily have this in here. So I may have to just kind of talk it through. Okay, I think I'm going to have to just talk it through with you. So you see within those, within that Kanban style board, each one there's a list. So I could have a list that just simply says topics, and those topics could be broken down according to your content pillars. Then in the next section, I could have, for example, pictures of myself, because when you're creating certain pieces of content, of course, you need to have video or pictures of yourself. So you could have that, what it is listed. Now, I would tend to store pictures into an app because this can, that can certainly end up, those pictures and video files can be huge. So that's why I wouldn't put that there. Another column could be, for example, resources that you want to pull from. That might be books that you want to go to in order to do things. And so now what you're able to do is when you're ready to create a piece of content, everything is in one place. So you can pull out the topic, you can find the picture or video you want to go with it, and then if there's a resource that you're going to be quoting, it's listed there as well. So what it does is it just simply allows you to have a place where everything is actually stored. The reason why this is important is because for most people, what ends up happening for them is because they don't have everything in one place. They're all over the place when they're trying to create content. And it just takes forever, or you can't remember where you put something or whatever. So it's so much easier to just take it and to actually organize it. And if you're going to do a folder, let's say in the Notes app, then I would go into the Notes app, I would create a folder, call it Content Ideas, And then what I would do is create individual notes that refer to a specific type of content and then include in that note the resources. So if it's something you want to pull from a book, if it is I don't know, something where you've watched it or there was someone's take on it, make sure you list the person. That way, when you go into the Notes app, you know everything's going to be in that content ideas folder, but it's all search based because in the Notes app, you can go up to the top, you can type in a few words, and it will bring everything up. You can also create smart folders within the Notes app. So for some of you, if you don't want to do like a Trello board, your Notes app could be, probably the best of both worlds simply because everything's right at your fingertips. It's in your Notes app and easy to get to regardless of where you happen to be. So Denise, let me know whether or not that answers your question regarding that. Because as I said, oh, and when you are sitting down to do a content planning session, you're going to pull everything right up from wherever you have it stored, and you're going to go based upon your content pillars and say, okay, I want to do a piece of content on this. I want to do a piece of content on this. Everything's right in one place. And you heard me mention having pictures and videos of yourself. You really want to make sure that at least a few times per month, you take a couple of pictures of yourself. Or if you want to do it one time per month and take 5 pictures of yourself, do it. Because what that's going to allow you to do is to also have pictures in various poses that are readily available for you to create your content. So if you're doing something where you're featured on, one side of the post and on the other side has the tip or strategy, all of that's ready because now you can just pull from the various pieces. Okay. So like I said, let me know if in fact you need more context around that. So, but yeah, so when you're creating these different ideas, I think oftentimes people just completely miss the boat on how these books that they're reading can in fact turn into pieces of content that can be very valuable to your audience, because don't assume that they're reading the same books you are. Don't assume that they've run across the same tip that you've come across. Don't even assume that they're looking at different people. Like, for example, if you pulling ideas, you can even pull ideas from YouTube videos where people are giving two different viewpoints or two different ways of coming across something. Like I was mentioning with the two TikTok videos where people were creating or making bread. So, you can definitely pull ideas that way and then just definitely have them ready to go. And I think when you start doing this, you'll realize that you will never be able to run out of ideas. The other thing is, as you're reading books, you'll read them in a different way because now you'll be reading books in such a way that you're looking for things that you can share with people, and you're thinking about the stories that you can incorporate, and you're thinking about your own interpretation of that, which all can become content ideas for you. All right. So hopefully this has been helpful for you. As I said, I just think that I know for a fact I have used a lot of different ideas that have come initially from a book and then, indicated how it helped me. And I know that people have reached out to me and said, okay, now I get it. Now I understand it. Even I had people reach out to me last week after I told the story about how horrible my very first live video was. And one of the things that they shared with me was, now I feel more comfortable that I can do it, because a lot of times what's happening is people see people going live, and these folks have been going live for a while and they're polished. So now that brand new person that wants to go live assumes they have to be as good as that other person. They don't realize that that other person has paid their dues by creating horrible live videos and everything wasn't that good. That's why, and this is a quote I would suggest you write down as well, which is that you don't ever compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 15. See, they've been at it for a while. They have made all the mistakes. They've made the necessary corrections. They work through the fears. They dealt with the people that come online and they troll them or whatever else happens. So just know that you definitely have a way of being able to help somebody else by sharing your take on it, your stories and so forth. All right? So I hope, as I mentioned, that this definitely was helpful to you. As she almost said, it was definitely helpful. So I'm glad to hear that. So as I said, just read books with a different perspective as you're going through them. This is what I would suggest you do is one, look for quotes in the books that you can pull out. The second thing is look for concepts that someone has explained that maybe it finally made something click for you, because if it made it click for you, then it's likely going to make it click for somebody else. Another thing is what's missing in the book, because again, when people write books, they're writing from their perspective, and maybe there's something you wish you would have known, and they didn't cover it in the book. So now what you can say is, I read this book, I learned a lot here, but this is something that I wish would have been covered. And after some research, this is how I was able to figure it out. So that would be another way that you could create a content idea around that. So definitely, look at look at the books that you have, go back and reread them. I always say there are some books that, you read, and then there are some books that you study. And the books that you study are the ones that you're going to read over and over and over again. I have a series of books that I read every year. So, and it's because each time I read it, I get something else out of it. The Big Leap is one of those that I read every single year. The Power of Focus is one. I read that one every single year. Atomic Habits, I read that one every single year. And so, and sometimes it doesn't mean I'm reading it cover to cover. It might mean because I've highlighted certain passages, I go back and read just that section because that's the thing that's clicking for me. And I truly do believe that when you start putting together a library of books, that what's going to happen for you is it's almost going to do what I like to call, excuse me, it's going to build what I call your bounce back files. Now, let me explain to you my concept of a bounce back file. This is my own little phrase that I use. There are going to be times when you're just going to be feeling low. Like somebody makes a crazy comment to you on a YouTube channel, or, you create a piece of content and it absolutely flops, or you get what I'm saying. So your bounce back files are the go-to files in your head that you can remember, that you've learned from either a book that you've read, something someone has said, a piece of wisdom that you've received, and so forth. And you train your brain to go to your go-to file so you can bounce back quickly. Because when you're building a business like this, you don't have time to wallow in sadness for 2 weeks. You don't even have time to wallow in sadness for more than 24 hours. So when somebody says something crazy to you online that's trolling you, then you use those go-to files, and it might be that you're hearing somebody say, you know what, trolls hit me all the time and this is what I do. Go to those go-to files so you can quickly bounce back, because at this point, we're building a business that is designed to help you create some additional income, maybe replace an income source, maybe help you start teaching other people who are waiting on you to be their mentor. It's going to allow you to get to the point where you're no longer stressed out at a job that you don't want to be at, which means we don't have time to wallow in sadness for 2 weeks. You got to get back up on the horse and get at it, because, why are you going to allow somebody else's keyboard courage to take you off your square. That's why you got to know why you're doing a business like this. You have to have, I mean, it's got to be solid. It has to be that you are, attempting to get to a point where you can be home so that you can enjoy life or spend more time with your family or take the grandkids on vacation or set up college funds for them or help them with their down payment or whatever it is. When your why is that strong, no one's taking you off your square. Someone's made a crazy comment to me yesterday on YouTube. Now, I was feeling pretty spicy yesterday. So I went at it, and it was one of those things where normally I would have just deleted it and moved on. And it wasn't offensive or anything like that. It was just a ridiculous comment. So I responded back. I felt so much better. And then I ended up, jumping into my community and doing some things there. And quite frankly, I didn't even think about that until just a few minutes ago. So in other words, that person's crazy comment obviously didn't affect me, but that's because I have great go to files. I have great files that allow me, and when I say files, I mean the files up here. I have great files that I've built and continue to add to that allow me to quickly bounce back from things. Now, I'm not going to tell you that there isn't going to be something you're going to receive as a comment or whatever that's not going to knock you off your square. It is going to happen to you. Some of it is going to take you a little bit longer, but you really want to get to the point where you build really strong go to files so you can bounce back quickly. All right. Okay. I got to get off this soapbox here, but the reason why I spend so much time on that is I can't tell you how many people, and a lot of it has been women in particular, that hear things and it just knocks them out of the game. I've seen people just like literally quit their businesses, and I'm thinking, no, you just have not built your go-to files. You have to take time. That's why personal development in a business, when we're building a business, it's not just something you should do, it's something you must do. And if you don't take the time to, figure out how you're going to work through fear, if you don't take the time to figure out how you're going to overcome imposter syndrome, if you don't take the time to build, standard operating procedures, and if you don't take the time to build a productivity system, you are going to struggle. And quite frankly, some of it is going to be unnecessary struggles. And it's just simply because you haven't yet built a system. You haven't yet built the files. You haven't yet found out how other people are doing things so that you yourself can use those. And as I said, anytime you learn something, pass it on to somebody else. And the way you're going to be passing it on is going to be in your content ideas. All right. So, okay, let's see. You were one of the victims that had to suffer through that very first live stream. And I tell you, it was awful. And I'm never going to stop telling that story because I know for a fact there are so many people that want to learn to go live, but they're terrified of it. And what a lot of people don't realize is that, we are acting in with bravery, not fearless. There's a difference between being brave and being fearless. Fearless means, you just don't have any fear. You just go for it. Brave means that you are acting in spite of the fear. I was terrified to hit go live that first time and probably the next 5 times after that. But eventually, as execute with bravery, as you do things with brave and being brave, what happens is you get to a point where over time it kind of goes away. Now, I'm not saying you won't ever experience a time beyond that where you are, in fact, afraid because it's going to happen. You might be on a bigger stage. You might be speaking to an audience of 500. Now, that might make you more uncomfortable, but you can do it. You just have to be willing to work through it. And that's what's going to separate those that are going to be really successful from those that are going to have average or mediocre success. It's just simply the ability to work through fear. It's the ability to bounce back quickly. It's the ability to push forward when you don't feel like it. That's another thing. we got to be able to learn how to push through when we're not feeling like doing something. And the way that you do that is you make sure you have very solid goals, because then you become goal driven, which means you're not going to stop until you reach the goal, and I could go into to a whole different thing on that, but I'm not going to do that today. So I'm going to get ready to wrap up here. But I do want you to think in terms of, what are some pieces of content that you have pulled, or what are some ideas or concepts that you've pulled from books that you can turn into reels or text post or long form videos or a lead magnet or a video series or a email series. What are some things that you can do? Because I have to believe that if you can come up with those ideas, you could easily come up with 30 days of content without really having to think a whole lot. So just think through those things. And I know for a fact you're going to have some incredible ideas. All right. So with that being said, thank you so much. Have I missed anything? I definitely want to make sure that I've answered any questions for all of you. Okay, I think that's everything. So I appreciate you being on live. And if you're watching the replay, I appreciate you being here as well. And so today we're wrapping up, and I'm saying to you, have an awesome day and an even better week. And I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye. See you next week, Wednesday.